There is nothing louder than an American hotel. And mind you, this was supposed to be a quiet, cosy, old-fashioned, homey place, gracious living and all that stuff. The clatter of the elevator's gate, some 20 yards northeast of my head, but as clearly perceived as if it were inside my left temple, alternated with the banging and booming of the machine's various evolutions, and lasted well beyond midnight. Every now and then, immediately east of my left ear, always assuming I lay on my back, not daring to direct my viler side towards the nebulous haunch of my bedmate, the corridor would brim with cheerful, resonant, and inept exclamations ending in a volley of good nights. When that stopped, a toilet immediately north of my cerebellum took over. It was a manly, energetic, deep-throated toilet, and it was used many times. Its gurgle and gush and long afterflow shook the wall behind me. Then someone in a southern direction was extravagantly sick, almost coughing out his life with his liquor, and his toilet descended like a veritable Niagara immediately beyond our bathroom. And when finally all the waterfalls had stopped, and the enchanted hunters were sound asleep, the avenue under the window of my insomnia, to the west of my wake, a staid, eminently residential, dignified alley of huge trees, degenerated into the despicable haunt of gigantic trucks roaring through the wet and windy night. And less than 6 inches from me, and my burning life was nebulous Lolita. After a long, stirless vigil, my tentacles moved towards her again, and this time the creak of the mattress did not awake her. I managed to bring my ravenous bulk so close to her that I felt the aura of her bare shoulder like a warm breath upon my cheek. And then she sat up, gasped, muttered with insane rapidity something about boats, tugged at the sheets, and lapsed back into her rich, dark, young unconsciousness. As she tossed within that abundant flow of sleep, recently auburn, at present lunar, her arm struck me across the face. For a second I held her. She freed herself from the shadow of my embrace, doing this not consciously, not violently, not with any personal distaste, but with the neutral, plaintive murmur of a child demanding its natural rest. And again the situation remained the same. Lolita with her curved spine to Humbert, Humbert resting his head on his hand and burning with desire and dyspepsia. The latter necessitated a trip to the bathroom for a draught of water, which is the best medicine I know in my case, except perhaps milk with radishes, and when I re-entered the strange, pale-striped fastness where Lolita's old and new clothes reclined in various attitudes of enchantment on pieces of furniture that seemed vaguely afloat, my impossible daughter sat up and in clear tones demanded a drink too. She took the resilient and cold paper cup in her shadowy hand and gulped down its contents gratefully, her long eyelashes pointing cupward, and then, with an infantile gesture that carried more charm than any carnal caress, little Lolita wiped her lips against my shoulder. She fell back on her pillow, I had subtracted mine while she drank, and was instantly asleep again. I had not dared offer her a second helping of the drug, and had not abandoned hope that the first might still consolidate her sleep. I started to move toward her, ready for any disappointment, knowing I had better wait, but incapable of waiting. My pillow smelled of her hair. I moved toward my glimmering darling, stopping or retreating every time I thought she stirred or was about to stir. A breeze from Wonderland had begun to affect my thoughts, and now they seemed couched in italics, as if the surface reflecting them were wrinkled by a phantasm of that breeze. Time and again my consciousness folded the wrong way. My shuffling body entered the sphere of sleep, shuffled out again, and once or twice I caught myself drifting into a melancholy snore. Mists of tenderness enfolded mountains of longing. Now and then it seemed to me that the enchanted prey was about to meet halfway the enchanted hunter, that her haunch was working its way toward me under the soft sand of a remote and fabulous beach. And then her dimpled dimness would stir, and I would know she was farther away from me than ever. If I dwell at some length on the tremors and gropings of that distant night, it is because I insist upon proving that I am not, and never was, and never could have been, a brutal scoundrel. The gentle and dreamy regions through which I crept were the patrimonies of poets, not crime's prowling ground. Had I reached my goal, my ecstasy would have been all softness, a case of internal combustion of which she would hardly have felt the heat, even if she were wide awake. But I still hoped she might gradually be engulfed in a completeness of stupor that would allow me to taste more than a glimmer of her. And so, in between tentative approximations, with a confusion of perception metamorphosing her into eye-spots of moonlight or a fluffy flowering bush, I would dream I regained consciousness, dream I lay in wait. In the first ante-meridian hours there was a lull in the restless hotel night. Then, around 4, the corridor toilet cascaded and its door banged. A little after 5, a reverberating monologue began to arrive in several instalments from some courtyard or parking place. It was not really a monologue, since the speaker stopped every few seconds to listen, presumably, to another fellow, but that other voice did not reach me, and so no real meaning could be derived from the part heard. Its matter-of-fact intonations, however, helped to bring in the dawn, and the room was already suffused with lilac grey when several industrious toilets went to work, one after the other, and the clattering and whining elevator began to rise and take down early risers and downers, and for some minutes I miserably dozed, and Charlotte was a mermaid in a greenish tank, and somewhere in the passage Dr. Boyd said good morning to you in a fruity voice, and the birds were busy in the trees, and then Lolita yawned. Frigid gentlewomen of the jury, I had thought that months, perhaps years, would elapse before I dared to reveal myself to Dolores Hayes. But by 6 she was wide awake, and by 6:15 we were technically lovers. I'm going to tell you something very strange. It was she who seduced me.